5 speakers. Most people have no idea what they are worth. If you bought hi-fi in the 70s or 80s, one might be in your garage right now. The repair shop tells you what to look for and what it is worth in 2026. No sponsored gear, no manufacturer relationships, just what the technicians know. Klipsch Heresy I. Paul Klipsch founded Klipsch and Associates in Hope, Arkansas in 1946, in a tin shed with a single engineer and one conviction. Horn-loaded speakers were more efficient than anything else available, and efficiency meant that less amplifier power could produce more sound without distortion. The original Klipsch designs were built for people who could not afford large amplifiers and did not want to compromise on volume or dynamics. The Heresy was introduced in 1957 as a center channel companion to the Klipsch horn. It used an Alnico magnet woofer, a driver material that Klipsch specified, because Alnico produces a stronger and more consistent magnetic field than the ceramic magnets that replaced it in the 1980s. Technicians who have measured both describe the Alnico versions as having a more controlled and natural bass response than the later ceramic magnet iterations. The specific version that matters is the Heresy I, with the original Alnico K22 woofer, produced between 1957 and approximately 1985. It is identifiable by the woofer stamp and the square cabinet design. After 1985, Klipsch moved to ceramic magnets and a redesigned cabinet. The engineering philosophy did not change. The specific component did. Original Heresy I pairs in good condition now sell for between $800 and $2,500 on eBay and Hi-Fi Shark in 2026. Restored pairs with recapped crossovers have sold for $2,299. In 1957, a pair cost approximately $200. That is a 10 to 12 times increase, outperforming most financial investments made in the same period. Prices mentioned are U.S.-based estimates. Check your local market. Verdict: the original Alnico Heresy is not just a vintage speaker. It is one of the few audio purchases from the 1950s that has increased in value every decade since it was made. Look for this if you have Heresy speakers in the garage. Check the woofer stamp for K22 and the magnet for Alnico before you decide what they are worth. Avoid the post-1985 ceramic versions if buying specifically for value. The collector market targets the original Alnico production. A $50 woofer magnet that separates a $200 purchase from a $2,000 asset. The second was built in England by a company making speakers since 1932, and the version that matters was built during a single decade Tannoy has never been able to replicate. Tannoy Cheviot. Tannoy was founded in London in 1926 and has been building speakers continuously since, longer than almost any other loudspeaker manufacturer still operating. The engineering decision that defines Tannoy's most valuable vintage production is the dual concentric driver, a design that places the tweeter at the exact acoustic center of the woofer so that both drivers share a single point source. The sound arrives at the listener's ears from one location, not two. The specific models that have appreciated most dramatically use the HPD, or High Performance Dual Driver Series, produced between approximately 1974 and 1980. The Cheviot was the mid-sized model in this range, using the HPD 315 driver in a reflex cabinet designed specifically around that driver's characteristics. What technicians find when they inspect surviving HPD Cheviots is construction that Tannoy has not replicated at this price point since. The crossover components in original HPD series speakers used component quality that reflected Tannoy's professional monitor heritage. The cabinets were built to tolerances the brand's current consumer production does not match. In 2026, a pair of Tannoy Cheviots with HPD 315 drivers sells for between $1,650 and $3,200 in the United Kingdom. In the United States, pairs trade at approximately $2,750. Polish listings in early 2026 showed pairs at the equivalent of over $5,000. Sellers across all markets consistently note that prices have increased every year for the last decade. Verdict: the HPD Cheviot is the specific model where Tannoy's dual concentric technology, professional monitor heritage, and build quality converged, and that convergence has not happened again at this price point. Look for this if you have any Tannoy speakers from the 1970s. Check for the HPD driver designation and the Cheviot cabinet. If the drivers are intact, the value is there. Restoration cost is modest relative to the market value. One British speaker that has tripled in value over 20 years. The third is American, and it has not tripled. It has increased by 7 times. JBL 4311. JBL was founded in Los Angeles in 1946 by James B. Lansing, an engineer whose career had already produced the drivers used in the Altec Lansing systems that defined cinema sound in the 1940s. When Lansing founded his own company, he applied the same professional engineering discipline to a new range of drivers and studio monitors that would set the standard for professional recording for the next 4 decades. The 4311 was introduced in 1968 as part of JBL's Professional Control Monitor series, speakers designed for recording studios that needed to accurately reproduce what engineers were mixing. A 12-inch pulp cone woofer, a 5-inch mid-range driver, and a dome tweeter with front panel controls that allowed engineers to match the speaker to their specific studio environment. The detail that explains the 431's current value is its studio pedigree. These were not designed for domestic hi-fi. They were designed for professional engineers who could not afford to get the sound wrong. When those speakers entered the domestic market, and thousands did, as studios upgraded equipment, buyers discovered that a speaker built to professional accuracy standards produced something consumer hi-fi at any price could not match. In 1978, a pair cost $485. In 2026, European pairs sell for between €1,250 and €1,500. Japanese dealers list pairs at $3,389. That is a 7 times increase in a market where most consumer electronics from the same period are worth nothing. Verdict: a professional studio monitor that entered domestic use and has appreciated every decade since, because studio accuracy standards do not age the way consumer hi-fi fashions do. Look for this if you have any JBL Professional Series speakers from the late 1960s or 1970s. Check for the 4311 or 4311B designation and confirm the drivers are original. Replaced drivers reduce value significantly. Original drivers, and you have an asset the market has consistently rewarded. 3 speakers, 3 continents, 3 engineering philosophies, all increased in value by at least 7 times. Before the final 2, the ones that have not just increased in value but become genuinely irreplaceable, if this is the kind of content you want more of, subscribe now. Quick question: do you have old hi-fi equipment sitting in storage right now? What we are about to show you suggests it is worth checking before you decide it is worthless. The 4th speaker was made in England in 1957, and the best surviving examples now sell for more than a new family car. Quad ESL 57. Peter Walker founded the acoustical manufacturing company, later known as Quad, in Huntingdon, England in 1936. Walker had one engineering conviction he pursued for his entire career: an electrostatic speaker with no moving cone, no voice coil, and no magnet would reproduce sound more accurately than any conventional driver design. He spent 20 years developing the technology to prove it. The ESL 57, introduced in 1957, used a charged electrostatic panel to move air directly without any of the mechanical components that introduced distortion in conventional speakers. The result was vanishingly low distortion in the mid-range frequencies where the human ear is most sensitive, a characteristic that recording engineers and serious listeners recognized immediately. The engineering inside the ESL57 was so specific to Walker's manufacturing process that it has never been fully replicated. The panel geometry, the bias voltage circuit, the charge distribution, Walker's solutions to problems that other manufacturers avoided by building conventional speakers instead. Peter Walker died in 2003. Quad continued under IAG Group ownership. The ESL63 and subsequent models are competent electrostatic speakers. They are not the ESL57 because the ESL57 was one engineer's specific solution, and that engineer is no longer alive to solve it again. In 2026, unserviced pairs sell for between 1,250 and 1,700 euros in Europe. A fully restored pair commands between $3,999 and $6,500 in the United States. The Wayne Piquet restoration, considered the definitive professional restoration, listed at $6,500 in June 2026. Verdict: the only electrostatic speaker Peter Walker ever built to this specification, irreplaceable not because it is rare, but because the engineer who knew how to make it is gone. Look for this if you have any Quad ESL panels in storage. Even unserviced pairs have significant value. A serviced pair is worth multiple times an unserviced one, and restoration specialists exist specifically for this model. 4 engineers who solved problems no one else has solved the same way since. The 5th is the one technicians consistently describe the same way, the speaker that defines what the word fortune actually means in this context. Altec Lansing Model 19. Altec Lansing was formed in 1941 from the assets of James B. Lansing's original company, the same engineering lineage that produced the cinema speaker systems used in Hollywood from the 1940s onwards. The Model 19 was introduced in the late 1960s as a domestic interpretation of Altec's voice of the theater. Professional cinema speaker, specified by major cinemas worldwide for its ability to fill large acoustic spaces with clear, undistorted sound at high volume. The Model 19 used a 15-inch woofer and a manta ray horn-loaded compression driver derived directly from the professional cinema systems Altec had been building for 20 years. What technicians consistently describe as efficiency. The speaker is rated at over 100 decibel sensitivity. 1 watt of amplifier power produces 100 decibels of output. Most modern domestic speakers require 10 watts to achieve the same level. In May 2026, a pair listed on US Audio Mart at $4,000. Italian listings in February 2026 showed pairs at 5,500 euros. Polish listings showed pairs at 38,000 zloty, approximately $9,500. The Asian market shows even higher prices for original condition examples. These were not expensive when new. A pair in the late 1960s cost approximately $800. The current market values them at $4,000 to $9,000. That is a 5 to 11 times increase, in a market where the buyers are professional audio engineers and serious collectors who know exactly what they are purchasing. Verdict: a cinema speaker that entered domestic hi-fi and appreciated to the point where the people who gave them away are now the same people paying $4,000 to buy them back. Look for this if you have any large Altec Lansing speakers from the late 1960s or 1970s, identifiable by its size, horn-loaded tweeter, and 15-inch woofer. Original crossover and drivers intact are essential for full value. A pair in original condition is worth a professional appraisal before any sale. Here is the principle I want you to take away from this video. One sentence. The speakers that are worth a fortune in 2026 are worth a fortune for one reason. They were built by engineers who solved specific acoustic problems and those engineers are no longer available to solve them again. 3 words: original, intact, irreplaceable. Which of these 5 do you have owned, or wish you had kept? Drop it below. See you next time.